talk about deteriorating, it comes two ways. It could be positive, it could be negative.
No, any deterioration is a negative movement.
Not really. You know, because let's put it in this context, for instance. When you say the economy is deteriorating, sometimes you go to the market and probably 1 kilo of fish that used to go for 1,000 naira all of a sudden becomes 1,500 naira.
Yeah, that's deterioration. Right?
That's a deterioration because there's an increase in the market.
Yeah,
so it doesn't necessarily always have to be...
That's inflationary, right? And the central bank has moved in to control inflation. And what we've seen is inflation has gone from 7.9 to 8.2. It could have gone to 10.
But then again, a lot of people always ask, does the Central Bank of Nigeria have to concentrate more on the inflation rate and the exchange rate than on ensuring that the economy is comfortable, so to speak, for the people?
No, the person with the responsibility, or the department with the responsibility of creating jobs and all of that, is the Federal Ministry of Finance, the National Planning Commission. Those are the people who are in charge of fiscal policy, who prepare the budget, which now votes so much to this sector and all of that. The central bank and the monetary policy had to ensure that in spite of all of these things, we don't have runaway inflation and the exchange rate is stable. They concentrate on stability. To go beyond that brief and try to do other things, you do it. I mean, even Janet Yellen is saying that I want to see unemployment go down. So there's alignment of goals, but also monetary policy at times reinforces fiscal policy. And that is what is important. But I want to bring out one thing. See, the people of the country cannot expect to be subsidized, right? Labor productivity growth in Nigeria is 3.9%. The economy is growing at 6%, which means that the Nigerian workforce is very highly unproductive, all right? And they're highly unproductive because many things, and you can claim that there's no power, there's no that. But even when there's power and all that, there are skills and technological breakthroughs that are required to increase productivity. You cannot have 170 million people producing $510 billion worth of goods and services, while in South Africa you have 50 million people producing almost 387 or $400 billion worth of goods and services. The productivity per man and the income per capita per person, right, in the country is low, and we are number 121 in the world in terms of income per capita, while we are number 26 in the world in terms of GDP. Why? Because we have a huge population that are probably highly unproductive in the sense that they don't have the resources to become as productive as they can. The other thing is that potential GDP growth is 11%, while real GDP growth is 6%. The difference between the two shows that this country can, if all resources were fully employed, will be at 11% without even working, right? So why are we at 6% when we should have been at 11%? Because the constraints to growth are quite profound, and we need to remove those constraints very quickly, eliminate them, and move forward. And that is what the focus is going to. It's not going to be an overnight thing. There's no silver bullet. There's a lot of work to be done. And so what we can say is that, thank God, we had an MPC meeting. They aligned monetary policy with monetary conditions. They will now have to focus on the tactical between now and September and think of the strategic after the election.
So now let's talk about some of the considerations that a financial derivatives company actually came up with. We've talked about increasing inflation rate already. Yes. Let's talk about the exchange rate across the market. That is dollar sales at the interbank, official, and the parallel markets.
Well, I think the exchange rate, what has happened? Last quarter, we saw a lot of fierce selling and speculative attack on the Naira. That has kind of subsided. The exchange rates, the Naira has actually appreciated in the parallel market from 173 all the way back to about 168. In the interbank market, there was some depreciation, and then the central bank at the official window stayed permanent. But what is more important is convergence. When you have what we call desegmentation of the exchange rate, when you have segmentation and the rates are divergent, it means that there's disequilibrium in the market. Now, what has happened is that there's greater equilibrium, but we are not there yet. My view, and which is a view not shared by many, but I know that you are not going to be able to bring down interest rates except you adjust the value of the Naira. The Naira, in my view, is overvalued, not grossly overvalued. It has to be adjusted. Can you adjust it now? No, you cannot do that now because of, obviously, for all sorts of reasons. Yeah. But Goldman Sachs put out his research that says that the Naira is 15 to 19% overvalued. I don't agree that it's that overvalued, but I agree that if you make some adjustments, it will allow you the flexibility to bring down interest rates, and then you can stimulate the economy. right? You can't have it both ways. But that's a discussion after the tactical issues have been addressed. So for now, the immediate has been addressed, the tactical has been addressed. What I'm talking about now is much more strategic, and that has to be addressed in an atmosphere of political and economic alignment.
Okay, now let's talk about the possible reversal in capital inflows.
Well, that's an issue that if you bring down interest rates, then that amount of foreign portfolio investments that came in may have to reverse. I do not think that's a major threat because the interest rate inflation differential between, which is, we have an inflation rate of 8.2%, and we have interest rates, MPR of 12, or treasury rates slightly higher. But if you take the difference between our inflation rate and our interest rates, and the difference between the interest rates and inflation rates in the US, this market is still relatively attractive. So I do not expect a massive outflow. However, because the US tapering is going to commence in October, and because the British have said that they are going to start increasing interest rates, the relative attractiveness of Nigerian paper is going to be reduced, which means that as we go into the third and fourth quarter, we might see some outflows. So we need to prepare for that. We also have to prepare for the fact that the crisis in the Middle East might be resolved one way or the other. And if oil prices go down to $100 or maybe around that range, we will actually have some difficulty because there will be election spending. We're already trying to borrow $1 billion to fight Boko Haram. We're trying to do this and all of that. So there are some underlying threats, right? But that's more tactical. And that is why the central bank kept its options open so that they can deal with that and make those adjustments. If not, they would have just gone optimistically and pushed down rates, and then the rest would have been pretty chaotic.
So now, as we wrap up this conversation, what are those key factors? Because you keep on mentioning that between this month, July, and September, some things ought to be put in place to ensure that the stability that the Central Bank of Nigeria is trying to achieve is actually maintained. What are those key factors to watch out for between July and September?
First and foremost, inflation. I think that inflation will increase in July from 8.2. It will move more towards 8.4 or 8.5. Why do I say that? The automotive policy has been put in place. The price of cars have all gone up. You know that already. They've been announced. There's no question about that. It takes time between when impact, transmission, and effect on the market. The people who are buying taxi cabs now, who are replacing their taxis, will have to pay the new prices. The people who are buying new buses have to replace them at new, and then we'll have to price transport fares to reflect the amortization schedule which they have under these new prices. So I think that you will begin to see that impact very soon. The benefits of the automotive policy will not begin to register or be felt in this economy for years to come. But the impact of the increased duty is immediate. So that's number one. Number two is that we saw that electricity prices tariff has gone up, and we saw that increase. And yet, all of this is happening. So there's inflationary pressure, and so the central bank has to be ready to deal with that, which means that we might not even just see a reduction in interest rates. We might see some tightening if inflation actually increases next month.
Okay, so we'll keep our eye on the market and keep our eye on those numbers as well. But thank you so much, Mr. Riwani, for coming in this morning.
Thank you, Harriet.
Well, I've been speaking with the Chief Executive Officer, Managing Director of Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Mr. Bismarck Riwani, and we've been looking at the MPC's recent decision and on maintaining status quo on all key rates, including the monetary policy rate at 12% and the implications for the economy. But Business Morning continues in just a moment. Please join me again.